Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. As everybody knows, we've been doing this show since January 2017. That's older than some of the people that I know. Wow, that's kind of scary. But we do have our co-host. That was our co-host. When did you start as a co-host, Trace?
Oh my gosh, I stopped counting like 3 years ago. So I think it was 2020. Yeah, 5 years ago.
Well, luckily you can count them on one hand. You know, when you get to that second hand, it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, I try not to count years in any capacity. I just kind of just roll with it.
Well, the years do go by fast. I mean, 8 years to be doing this show. But for people that have not listened to this show before, Ask Brien is a show that we try to help business owners learn something about their business. Either there'll be a story of, we had the founder of Oat Milk was on our show at one point. I don't know if people know that. We had the founder of the Learning Annex. So we have people that have been successful, created a business from scratch, and really made it something big. Or we can have somebody who's a specialist in a specific area. It could be anywhere from social media to website design to financial planning to inventory control, anything, customer service, anything where we can try to teach something to business owners. That's what the Ask Brien show started out over 8 years ago. We've had a couple of co-hosts, a couple of engineers. Now we got the A-team here. So we've got the co-host from 2020 and the super-duper engineer. So, but Traci, people say the show is called Ask Brien. My name is Peter. Your name is Traci. Where's the, how did you come up with Brien? And without explaining it to everybody, we do tell people that you do spell Brien with an E, B-R-I-E-N. And not everybody understands why. But you, who have been doing this show since 2020, stopped in 2025, and now are just a special co-host. Very, very special.
I'm a highlighted guest every month.
Exactly. So try to explain to people, why is Brien spelled with an E?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for making the exception for me to be on the show every month, because I miss you guys when I'm not here, and I appreciate that. So that's a new E I can throw in there. But being the E expert that I am, we really have to, and you've already done a good job of it, but we can never applaud our engineer enough in reality or the sound effects.
Thank you, Traci.
Yeah.
It's good to have you here again.
Thank you. I miss you guys.
I know.
And so I'm going back in the archives of my brain here, but what I do know for sure is that this show is all about entrepreneurship and all about experts helping our entrepreneurs shortcut their learning curve. So let me see if I can remember the formula, because we all know math's not my strong suit. Just ask our guest today. We're estimating that. Well, we don't estimate it because the formula is based on that you need to have a minimum of 10,000 hours in your industry or area of expertise in order to be qualified as an expert. That's not what we say. That's what they say. But what we say is that there's no entrepreneur that's ever worked 40 hours a week, 52 weeks for an average of 5 years to get that 10,000 hours. So we think it's shortcutted by at least probably a couple years. And any expert that we've ever had on Ask Brien said they wouldn't know a 40-hour work week if it was presented to them on a platter. So that's that, right? So and then there's the education factor. One of the things that we, in all seriousness, we have a lot of fun on the Ask Brien radio show, but it is at its core, the value and mission of the show is to educate and to help bring all kinds of insights around businesses and marketing and how to grow your business and scale your business and all the pitfalls that you could fall into. And so, yes, we're all about educating. And that gets me pretty enthusiastic. What about you, Peter?
Well, I am so excited!
Yes. Yes, and then there's the eardrum.
Oh, my God.
The eardrum that it gets busted every time.
Some people never learn.
Yes, because
And
they
by the way-
lack empathy.
Okay, well, I don't know what that means, but you know, in the song "The Wall," isn't "We don't need no education," you know, right? So wasn't that the
Yeah, and that's
Pink Floyd?
That's
Pink
a
Floyd.
sample size. That's a sample size of one song, and it's not factual. But good retro 80s, 70s music poll.
Well, I've read about it in books because I don't know about that ever.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're way too young for that, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Whatever.
I'm Generation ZZZ, also known as sleeping.
I wish.
Oh, yeah.
You are anything
Yeah,
but
I'm sure
sleepy.
that- Yes, you are high energy. That is for
Turbocharged.
sure.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I just happen to have some insight that our guest has multiple different areas of expertise. So I think we're up for a really interesting and diverse conversation today. So I say that we're probably kind of gotten enough ease out of the way. What do you
Well,
think, Peter?
I'm glad because I thought you were going to say about my ego, but I'm glad that you think it's so small. Great. All right. So
No, I don't. No, I don't, by
Oh.
the way. And just because you brought it up, it just shows that it's not.
Yeah, that's a given.
I was empathizing. All right. So, but before we go on to the show, we mentioned this earlier. Okay. Unfortunately, and fortunately, my engineer is wearing a shirt with an E on it.
Yes.
And what is that? Emerald City!
It says Emerald City, and Peter says to me, "What's that about?" I said,
Exactly.
what do you mean? What's the Emerald City? He said, I don't know what.
Well,
What's
there's
that
no
reference?
business involvement. Unless there's a business, if they don't need an accountant or a lawyer, I'm
Mr.
not going to know about
Bronstein,
it. Maybe I could be the mayor of Emerald City.
you're the same
E for an
mentality as the Munchkins in Emerald City. So that would actually work perfectly. Yes. Emerald City is from The Wizard of Oz.
Yes, and I'm going to be
Peter.
the mayor.
Yeah.
I'm
yes,
running.
Yes.
Okay.
Where's my
Well,
electoral
it's a
vote?
very,
Waiting on-
magical place.
Waiting on the
So,
tornado
I
to
don't
come
know.
through and take you away.
I am the tornado and the
Yeah.
hurricane. What are you talking about? Have you not listened to me
I don't know,
enough?
I think the real question is, are you wearing the ruby slippers? Because that's really where the magic happens. It's all about the shoes.
Always with women, it's always about the shoes.
Always.
And our guest is going to
Always.
explain to us how many shoes he's dealing with. All right, so.
He deals with a lot of shoes.
I'm sure.
But you know what? What he won't tell you is how many of them are his.
Oh, okay. Let's keep it to this is a kid show, you know. All right, let's go. All right, Robert, are you there?
I am here.
All right. We thought we may have lost you. You might have said, "I don't know what I got into. Somebody, made me go into the show, and I don't know what I'm doing here, and I'm out of here." So, but you survived.
No.
All right.
I hovered in the background. I was listening.
Exactly. So, Robert, first of all, people don't know much about your background, so I'm not asking you for a resume or a job interview here, but try to give us a little background of what you've done in your career, and then we're going to get into exactly part of what you did in your career and have an analysis on that.
I guess to sum it up, I guess you could say entrepreneur. I've been that way right out of college. Multiple different businesses. Many started from scratch. Background in education was marketing, finance, economics, and that gave me a good foundation, just a foundation to start from. But everything from construction to entertainment to real estate, the constant throughout my life has been real estate. I started pretty young. I think I was 27 when I bought my first investment property. It's been varied. It hasn't been a linear journey, but it's been wonderful. I've had a lot of great experiences and met a lot of great people and learned a lot.
So
I can go into detail if you like.
no, we'll have you share some of that. But before we go in a little bit further into what we discussed earlier, I want to know, what was the first business you started when you graduated college?
That would be insurance. I started an insurance agency. I worked for some people for 3 or 4 years, kind of learned the ropes a little bit, and then struck out on my own with another gentleman that was older than myself. We had our first office in the basement of a bowling alley. It was about 9
a Christmas
by 10,
party there.
and we could hear the pin setter over top of our head. So it was kind of hard to have conversations with clients because of the clanging and knocking inside the office. And we started with a gateway computer, if you remember those.
Yes, I do. The cows.
This is going way back, with the green screens. And we started that, and then my strength turned out to be recruiting staff and salespeople for us. So we started from zero, and we got to about $6 million in sales within 3 years, which was pretty good for a startup. I think we had 15 or 16 employees ultimately.
That's very
So that
successful.
was my first business.
That's very successful. Now, you mentioned to me, and this is where we're going to focus for the next 8 minutes before we take our break. You mentioned to me that one of your careers was as a financial planner. And so what I know, or what people tell me is, listen, from age 20 to 30, you can't save money because you got to pay your student loans back and try to get money for down payment for your house. So it's really hard to save, even though the other side of the coin is if you don't start saving at a young age, it's hard to accumulate money because of the accumulation and capitalization of interest, right? So my question is, you can save from age 20 to 30, $50,000, and your options are you can put all the money towards a down payment for a house, or you could do it or doubling up your student loan payments, or creating a retirement account for you. So when you hit 65, depending on where Social Security is. So in that option, what would you do?
If I was in that age bracket, I think the one thing I would definitely do is set up, this is very basic, but I would set up some sort of a system where you have 10% of your earnings withdrawn on a monthly basis, and you could have that go into a mutual fund or any sort of investment vehicle. But as long as you're consistently pulling money aside from what you feel in your pocket at the end of the week, you'll adjust your lifestyle to that, and that money will accumulate over time, and it'll give you options. So it's more of a discipline thing than anything. And then if you don't do that, then you might wind up in a situation where you want to buy a house or you want to do something, and you won't have those options, because really that's what money is. It gives you options in life.
Now, lots of people in that age group don't understand the stock market very well. They don't understand mutual funds, whatever. So where would you put people like that? I mean, it's like, hey, listen, I'm a radio show personality, and my wife is works as a nurse, right? So where am I going to put the money? It's not like, should I throw it all into Apple stock because it's doing well, or do you pick a mutual fund that's going to follow the S&P because over time that's going to work, or how do you determine where to put it?
Yeah, if you're just starting out, I would say choose a low cost, low fee ETF that mirrors the S&P 500.
So explain, people.
That.
I know what it is, but explain ETF. Some people don't know what that is.
Okay, ETF is an exchange-traded fund, and it's like a mutual fund, which is basically a collection of a bunch of individual stocks. But an ETF is the lowest cost instrument that you can purchase. And when you start out, I think that's a good place to start. And then you have to educate yourself and understand all the different ins and outs of costs involved and so forth. But these days, there's all kinds of options online that you can go into, online platforms, and they will literally walk you through it. These kinds of things weren't available, 15 years ago. Nowadays, it's become very, very easy to get in and to start the journey.
So I got two questions on this path. One is, I know what it is, but our listeners may not. What is dollar cost averaging?
Okay, so dollar cost averaging is where, like I said, you're having money withdrawn directly from your paycheck every month or every week or biweekly, however you're paid. And immediately you're buying shares in that ETF, let's say, for example. And at some points you're going to be buying low. At some points you're going to be buying high. But over the long run, as the market grows, you're going to be coming out ahead rather than trying to pick your own time to buy. And that's where people make a big mistake. They try to time the market. They sit on some cash. Oh, I'm going to buy now. I'm going to sell now. And it's been proven over time that unless you're a real expert, you're not going to come out ahead if you take that approach. So you're better to dollar cost average into your investments.
How much money do you think somebody needs in their retirement account or in their own stock account or in their bank account before they buy an individual stock?
An individual stock. Well,
right. So I got all my
really
money I got all my money in a mutual fund, and you know what? I think Nvidia is still got a lot of legs left, so I want to put my money into it. You know, how are you going to advise somebody like that?
That depends on a lot of factors: your age, your income, your life goals. I'd like to be able to give an easy answer, but there really isn't without laying out all the factors that come into that. Buying individual stocks are great, but I feel like if you're going to take that approach, you need to be educated. You need to be watching the fundamentals and the technicals and understand how that stock moves before you just jump. The worst thing in the world is to try to take advice from an expert online guru. We used to say when I was working in the field that if it's information that you read in Yahoo Finance and all these other places, whatever upswing might happen has probably already happened. In other words, the news, the information you get is usually a little bit late. That's where the education part comes in. You have to do your own homework on these things or have somebody who's an advisor who's very well versed in individual stocks. So
you mentioned two terms. I know what they are, but our listeners may not. What are fundamentals and what is technical?
Well, fundamentals have been around for quite a while. Friedman expanded on those. I'm sure there's lots of books out there that have been written and so forth, but those are basic characteristics of a company. They're financial characteristics, revenue and all those things, expenses and the different ratios within the company, financial ratios. And technicals have more to do with the demand of that particular stock or instrument in the market. So the buyers and sellers of that particular instrument. And technicals are a little bit more involved to get that knowledge, but it'll serve you well if you can understand them. It used to be a time when people only followed fundamentals primarily, but after 08, 09, people became much more interested in technicals to be able to follow what the market's going to do.
And we have about 30 seconds left. So can you explain to people what a stock option is?
A stock option? Oh, okay. Now, options are... I would suggest if you want to get into options, only to do covered calls. Mm-hmm. And that's where you own the underlying position, the underlying stock, and you purchase an option with an idea what it's going to do in the future. But it's a way where you can not become burned too badly.
Wow. All right, we got to take a quick break. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Like no other station in the world. You don't like no other station in the world. And we have the wizard from the Emerald City online. Oh, sorry. All right. he was asking.
Still disappointed in you that you
He
didn't
was
know what
asking me.
that was.
He sent me Google request.
Did
He
he?
needs to get to Kansas City.
Yeah.
To get to Kansas.
Asked
but
the wrong
I don't
person.
know.
Yeah, I was thinking he was thinking like Emerald City Casino in like Vegas.
That's what I was thinking. Exactly. I'm a gambler. I'm a stock option
I
guy.
just knew that about you. I just knew that about you somehow. I was like, he thinks it's some casino in Vegas.
I did.
Win big, baby.
Do I know you or do I know you?
Scary. But you had some questions for our guest, Robert, and so I know you wanted to ask him some questions because you never get to speak to this guy. So go ahead.
Yeah, we talked a lot about finance at the beginning of the show, but finance is such a primary indicator for all industries and all markets, but it really has a tendency to impact construction. And I know you have a very a lot of vast experience in the construction. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, like how you got started in that business and what it was like then, and then really some of the trends that you've seen shift over time with construction, especially in the commercial space too, because of all the things that happened with COVID. So what is happening in the landscape of the construction business?
Well, I got my start. Do you guys remember Blockbuster Video?
Yeah, I still have an overdue tape. Oh, sorry.
So I worked for a company out of Philadelphia. That was my first construction job, and we built the first 3 Blockbuster Video stores. And that was a fantastic.
Wow.
I didn't know how to pick up a hammer or what a nail was or anything, but thankfully these guys were willing to show me the ropes, and I kind of advanced with the company and moved up and became a project manager and so forth. And then after that, some time later, I had moved into an area on the Chesapeake Bay and bought a house on the water, and I couldn't get anybody to fix my dock in front of my house. And this is kind of a crazy thing, but I just chased trying to get a contractor to come out, excuse me, and couldn't find one. And I came across some old equipment, and I decided to purchase that equipment and started a pile driving company, Marine Construction. And it took me on a journey. I did some research. I hired some good people that knew the industry, and I grew that business and had a blast. And in the winter, when everything would freeze over and we couldn't do much, I would take my men and we would build houses and remodel and do all kinds of things like that. Really enjoyed it a lot, and I've learned a lot about a lot of aspects about construction, just in general, kind of across the board. I think we've been through a period during COVID where the construction industry has been going kind of crazy, and we're seeing tenancy, vacancy there's just a lot of empty space everywhere. Things are definitely slowing down. If you watch the real estate market, you can see the foreclosures are ticking up everywhere in some of the hottest markets. So it's interesting what's going on. The trades, certain trades still seem to be going pretty well. The economic situation, I think, everywhere right now has got people sort of with cold feet, wondering, what's next. And I wish I had a crystal ball that I could, try to tell people, hey, this is what you should do and what you shouldn't do. I do know this in my experience, just like in the stock market, it's always wonderful if you can buy low and sell high. So my gut tells me, having been through this in 2008 and 2009, 10, that there will be some opportunity in the future, probably not too far off, maybe in the next 12 to 18 months, for people that are on the sidelines and want to make a purchase in the real estate market. I think there'll be some wonderful opportunities. And we saw this before, and I've been through this, and I know, Peter, you've seen this before as well. It's a cycle. Economics are cycles.
So I'm always known on the show for pivoting. And so you mentioned that you had built a team. You saw a need, you filled the gap, you built a team, and you were able to be really flexible with that team in terms of what types of construction you were doing. But there's been a lot of talk lately about the lack of skilled labor in the fields of, for lack of a better way to say it, the blue-collar fields. And what are you seeing in terms of, is there going to be a concern around the shortage of labor in the construction field? And what are some of the things that you're seeing that might be encouraging to people to get into those fields?
There's going to be there's a great shortage right now, and there will be an even greater shortage. I was watching a Mike Rowe show video, and there's a company out there that builds our nuclear submarines, and he's working with them trying to find skilled labor. And he said that they had 140,000 openings for people with skills in the trades. I mean, that's amazing. I feel like if a person's young or youngish and they're looking for an area of the economy to get into, regardless of what your academic background or your education, if you don't mind using your hands a little bit and your brain, I think there's fantastic opportunities out there. I've met these people. I've seen people. I've talked to people. I think I love education. I love learning, but I think the way that things have gone, it's sort of excluded. People have thought, I don't want to do that, or that's not a good way to make a living, and that's just wrong. I mean, and if you look at supply and demand, if you have not enough skilled tradespeople to go around, and there's always going to be in demand, people need their houses, their plumbing fixed, their roofing, siding, electrical, whatever it is. I mean, you're just going to be able to increase your prices. People have to get the work done. So I think it's a great opportunity for people that are out there that are wondering about what to do next. If they're able-bodied and they're willing to do that.
We're going to be taking a quick break. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And now a word from our sponsor, Legal Steps.
We want to say thank you to Legal Steps. It's LEGALSTEPZ. It's spelled with a Z. .com. And once you log on to Legal Steps, you've made that decision. This is it. I'm going to finally do something that I've been dreaming about for months, maybe years. This is your time. You're on their website. All you have to do is pick which course you want. They offer 3 different courses. You can learn to register a trademark, form an LLC, or form an S corporation. And once you're on their website, it's really kind of up to you. You are your own boss, if you will. You can pick and choose when you take the course. You can pause it, rewind it, come back to it. I was able to take one of the courses on my own time, which I think is huge for everyone. We're all busy. We all have other things that we're worried about. Maybe you have obviously another job, a second job. You have a family, you have a dog, whatever it is that you're running after on a day-to-day basis. You can't be worried about someone else's schedule and, oh gosh, I got to log on at this exact time. That's not how it works with LegalSteps.com. You can show up when you're ready and come back to it. If you need to go make dinner, or the kid's crying, or the dog needs to go out, come back to it and start up again. When you are on the screen, you can see it's kind of like a screen in screen. And so you can see your legal expert and what they're looking at. And so you're literally following along with them, and you know that you're answering the questions the right way. And really, if you get to the point where you're kind of frustrated and maybe a little bit confused, the experts at Legal Steps will just do it for you. So there's really nothing to lose other than $150 for each course. And considering, what this means for you, this great idea that you've had for so long, you cannot let something like $150 get in the way. So take the time, spend a little bit of money, and you're finally on your way to having your own business, something that you've wanted for years. These experts that I've talked about, they have over 30 years experience, so you know that you're in good hands. All of the courses are reviewed by the attorneys, and so you're not just dealing with somebody who's maybe just researching the answer that you need on the fly. These people know what they're doing inside and out. You're in great hands with the experts at Legal Steps. It's LEGALSTEPZ.com.
Well, thank you, Jen, and thank
You're
you
welcome.
to our sponsor, Legal Steps.
Indeed.
All right. Well, we're back on the show. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And we have our guest, Robert. And Traci, you had a couple more questions?
Yeah, I also wanted to highlight the you mentioned at the beginning of the show that you had started and ran an insurance agency, and you also, I know from your bio and your background, that you also ran an insurance claims adjusting company as well. And I feel like that's an industry that is it's just not getting a lot of love right now, insurance. And I guess what I want to understand is, what is going on with the industry of insurance? What are you seeing? Is there any way that this can get any better for the consumer, or if you're in the insurance business, like how do you even stay sane with everything that's going on? Maybe you could share some behind the scenes about the impact of the industry and how it's shifted.
Okay, so I was a licensed public adjuster in 5 states, and we worked the hurricanes in Florida. And for people who don't know what a public adjuster is, I think most people know they're very popular. California has more public adjusters than any other state. Florida's number 2, or maybe it's Texas, but they're really close. So a public adjuster would basically become an advocate for the policyholder and step into the shoes of the policyholder to negotiate the claim when they have one against the insurance company. And a lot of people don't realize, but the adjuster that's either hired or works on staff for the insurance carrier has the insurance company's best interests in mind, regardless of what they might think, the consumer. There's a lot of social media marketing and influence out there. And we've all heard the slogans like a good neighbor and you're in good hands and those kinds of things. But in my experience, if you have a claim of a significant size, I think it's to people's benefit to hire a public adjuster, a good public adjuster. Just like any field out there, there are all types. But having somebody on your side, most people don't understand insurance contracts, and they really are befuddled and lack the ability and know-how how to walk through a claim and how to negotiate it, how to document everything, how to do all the forensics necessary to adequately be compensated in that situation when you have a claim. In terms of insurance, the insurance industry, what I see particular, I don't want to call out carriers, but there's one carrier, it's probably the largest one in the country. They've been changing the language in their insurance contracts, their homeowners insurance policies primarily, to make it more and more, it makes it easier for them to deny claims or to pay less on a claim. And that's just been picking up speed from what I've seen in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And it's not getting any better. So you pay all the money out in premiums to your insurance carrier, and then when you actually need to call on that carrier to respond to that agreement, that contract, you might find yourself in a situation where you throw up your hands and you're like, why did I pay all this money over these years? So it hasn't gotten any better from what I've seen, and I'm still kind of connected to the industry a little bit. And I just tell people, if you're upset about it, call your politician, your local legislatures and legislators, and tell them your experience. And also you can call your state insurance commissioner and file complaints if you find yourself in a situation. I love it when I hear that someone had a claim and the insurance carrier stepped up to the plate and did what they were supposed to do, but that was a rarity in my experience. We had Hurricane Michael in the panhandle of Florida, and we handled about 275 claims. And, I might have had 10 or 15 that went smoothly, and the rest of them were dragged out. Delay, deny, defend is typically how it goes. And there's a book written with that title. If anybody's interested, they can read it. So the situation, it's not good for the consumer. Sorry to say, wish I could say different, but that's been my experience.
Well, that sounds a little bit like bad faith insurance from the lawyer side.
Well, Peter, that's your wheelhouse.
Yeah, well, exactly. But it's not just real estate insurance. It goes to health insurance too. Try to get a prescription drug that your doctor tells you to take. It works everywhere in that whole business. We got to take a quick break. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM with my co-host Traci. Traci, take it away.
Well, Rob, your real estate expertise has now crossed international borders, and you are a licensed realtor in San Carlos, Mexico, which I think is pretty exciting. And I guess one thing I would love is for you to share, like if anyone's interested in knowing more about the real estate experience and, internationally and being an expat, what would be the best way for them to find out more information about you in that area?
The best way to find out more about living in Mexico is to tune into the Expat Experience podcast, and you can find that on all the usual platforms, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And you can access my website also, which is robdeforge.com. So, yeah, I was licensed and been involved in real estate, like I think I mentioned, since the age of about 27, and was a realtor in the United States, and then decided to do that down here. And living in San Carlos, Sonora State, which is about 4 hours from the border of Arizona. So we have a lot of people that go back and forth, and it's a wonderful beachfront community with tremendous mountains and just a wonderful, diverse ecosystem here. And most of the conveniences of living in the States, but there are things that people like to go back up and access back in the States, consumer items and things like that. So, so it's been a wonderful experience being involved in real estate here in San Carlos, and it's growing quite rapidly. Some of the listeners might be familiar with what Playa del Carmen and Cancun and Cozumel were like, say, 30 years ago. That would describe what San Carlos is like now. But like everywhere else that's sort of beautiful and ideal, people have figured it out and are figuring it out, and they're continuing to come here, and so it's growing quite a bit. And it's a wonderful area, and we have all kinds of different places available, houses and condominiums and beachfront and mountain homes, just about anything that you can think of, all across all the price ranges. So it's an extraordinary place. We found this about 8 years ago, and then we decided to pull the plug. Going on 3 years now, made the move down here, and no regrets.
Well, Peter, do you want to take us out with some more questions?
So the first question I have is, you've been involved in multiple businesses. You have started multiple businesses. What is the most important attribute you have that you know of to success?
Passion and I would say research, education. Those are the two main things to be successful. You have to like what you're doing and be passionate about it. If you're not passionate, it's not going to happen. No matter how much you're attracted to making money, if you really want to be successful and be satisfied, you need to be passionate about the industry that you choose.
Next question. So you mentioned some point where not only the stock market but the real estate market goes up and down. The stock market, you can see it, right? It goes $208 a share, $50 a share. It jumps around. You can see it in real numbers. You can't see that with the real estate market as quickly. Okay, it just takes a little bit more. It's more liquid to be in stocks than to be in real estate. Give us one red flag for a danger zone, and you think of in the real estate market, and one green flag of, wow, it's going to take off.
I would say time on market, when you see properties sitting and people are cutting the prices, the listing prices, things aren't going well. And we're seeing that just about everywhere. Grain flag, boy, that's kind of like timing the market a little bit. I would say taking a good look, understanding the market, look at historical data of what prices sold for the past, or what houses sold for the past 3, 4, 5 years. Trends, kind of the same in the stock market, but like you said, it's a little bit harder to identify. But I think if you research and understand the market, it helps a lot. And having an experienced realtor is crucial. I've been in this for a long time, and the people I work with have been down here for 30 years. So working with people that are experienced and can help you identify that.
So as a financial planner, you talked to us about stock market and you talked about real estate, right? So in an allocation of assets, age 50, male, married, 2 kids, 1 kid's going to college in 2 years, 1 kid is already in college, right? What kind of asset allocation would you have? You have stocks, I know, is one. I know you have real estate, probably your own house, maybe an investment, whatever. Where else would you allocate money?
Well, I used to look at it sort of like you can take a multitude of approaches, but you look at it as like a 3-bucket system where you have, cash in one, and maybe fixed income in another one, and then your growth stocks in another one. So as you age, you want things more locked in, because as you get older, you don't have the ability to bounce back from, let's say, a down market. And you're in a position where maybe you're living off of the income from your portfolio. So maybe at age 50, and again, you have to look at every individual situation. You can't just give a blanket answer. So maybe you have 50% of your assets in growth stocks and different ETFs and things like that, and then maybe you have 50% or 40% or whatever in other types of instruments that are more predictable. Anything from treasuries to CDs to, preferred stocks. You can, the whole gamut. That's the thing about investing. There's, thousands and thousands of different instruments. And again, it's your own comfort level and having the discipline to know what you're investing in, and then be willing to sit down with your portfolio on a regular basis and make adjustments, as necessary, because everybody's life changes. Nothing is linear. Things come up. People are, I want to buy a cabin, or I want to buy a boat now, or I want to do this or that or whatever. So it's always there is no one size fits all. It's your appetite. It's your risk tolerance. What you can put up with and what you're comfortable with.
Well, thank you very much. You've been listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Traci. Over and out.